when a police dog discovered a little girl hiding in an abandoned shed. The officers' faces turned pale at what they found. What started as a routine missing child search quickly turned into something far more disturbing. The experienced K-9 unit had seen many cases before, but nothing could have prepared them for this discovery. This is the chilling story of how one dog's keen senses revealed a truth that would shake an entire community. As the search team ventured into the dense woods at the edge of town, they had no idea what horrors awaited them. A frantic 911 call comes in just as the evening shift is changing at the Oakwood Police Department. Sarah Miller's voice cracks with panic as she reports her 7-year-old daughter, Emily, hasn't returned home from playing with friends at the neighborhood park. She's never late, never. She knows to be home before the streetlights come on. Sarah sobs into the phone. Within minutes, patrol cars descend on Maple Street as neighbors emerge from their homes, concern etched on their faces. The neighborhood quickly mobilizes as darkness approaches, forming search parties that call Emily's name into the growing shadows. 3 hours pass with no sign of Emily. The temperature drops as night fully settles in, adding urgency to an already tense situation. Police resources are stretched thin with another major incident across town. A multi-car pileup on the highway demanding attention from several units. Detective Wilson, the lead officer assigned to the case, interviews Emily's friends who last saw her heading home along the path that borders the woods. She said she thought she saw her cat running that way. One little boy explains, pointing toward the dense tree line that locals warn their children to avoid. Sarah Miller paces in her living room, clutching her daughter's school photo as her husband speaks with officers outside. Her desperation grows visibly with each passing minute as she reveals critical information to Officer Rodriguez. Emily is severely asthmatic, she explains, voice trembling. Her emergency inhaler is still in her backpack on the kitchen counter. If she has an attack, she can't finish the sentence. The officer nods grimly, understanding the situation has just become potentially life-threatening. The father, stoic until now, turns away to hide his tears. As the search enters its 4th hour, Officer Martinez, a 15-year veteran with special training in missing persons cases, arrives at the scene with his personal vehicle. Though technically off-duty and called away from his son's birthday dinner, Martinez couldn't ignore the call about a missing child. He makes the crucial decision to bring in Rex, their most experienced tracking dog, despite the German Shepherd also being off-duty. The K-9 unit wasn't scheduled to be available until morning, but Martinez knew waiting wasn't an option. Rex has found children before when no one else could. Martinez tells the increasingly desperate parents as the dog eagerly jumps from the vehicle. He tracked a 3-year-old through a rainstorm last spring when we had almost given up hope. If Emily's out there, he'll find her. The Millers watch with a mixture of hope and dread as Rex is presented with Emily's favorite stuffed animal, a well-worn plush rabbit she'd slept with since infancy. The dog takes several deep sniffs, his training kicking in immediately as he begins working the area around the house. But as Rex began picking up Emily's scent from the toy, something about his behavior immediately concerned his handler. Instead of the methodical, confident tracking pattern Martinez had seen hundreds of times before, Rex became unusually agitated, pulling hard against his lead and emitting a low whine that made the hairs on the back of Martinez's neck stand up. Whatever Rex sensed in the gathering darkness, it wasn't just the trail of a lost child. It was something that made even this battle-tested police dog anxious. Martinez exchanged a worried glance with Detective Wilson. In 15 years of search and rescue operations, he had never seen Rex react this way, and that single fact terrified him more than he dared admit to the watching parents. The search party follows Rex as he leads them away from the residential area, his powerful nose working overtime against the damp night air. Officer Martinez keeps a firm grip on the leash as the German Shepherd pulls with unusual intensity toward the abandoned Westmore property, a decrepit farm that had stood empty for nearly a decade. The flashlight beams cut through fog that seems to have materialized from nowhere, creating eerie, shifting shadows across the overgrown fields. Detective Wilson radios for additional units as they approach the property line. Something about the dog's behavior suggesting they're closing in on something significant. Rex never falters on a scent. Martinez whispers to Wilson as they navigate the tangled underbrush. But I've never seen him this determined before. The dog pauses briefly at a broken section of fence, where officers discover a small pink hair ribbon caught on a rusty nail. Sarah Miller confirms through tears that Emily had been wearing matching ribbons that morning. The find energizes the search team, but the parents' faces reflect the grim reality that they're moving farther from civilization and deeper into a place no child should be alone. The abandoned Westmore property has a troubled history that locals rarely discuss. Once a prosperous dairy farm, it fell into disrepair after the owner's mysterious disappearance 15 years ago. Rumors of financial troubles, family disputes, and darker theories had circulated, but nothing was ever proven. The main house had burned down years ago, leaving only a collection of outbuildings slowly being reclaimed by nature. Teenagers occasionally ventured there on dares, but most people in Oakwood gave the place a wide berth. Officer Rodriguez, a lifelong resident, crosses himself subtly as they pass the charred foundation of the main house. The night grows colder as clouds obscure what little moonlight had been guiding them. Several officers switch to thermal imaging equipment, scanning the outbuildings methodically. I never liked this place, even as a kid, Rodriguez murmurs to his partner. My grandfather used to say Old Man Westmore was into things nobody in town wanted to acknowledge. His partner nods silently, too focused on the search to engage in local folklore. But the words hang in the air, adding to the oppressive atmosphere surrounding them. The property feels unnaturally quiet. No crickets chirping, no distant traffic noise, just the sound of boots on overgrown grass and the occasional radio crackle. Martinez notices how the fog seems thicker here, swirling around their ankles as if with purpose. Even the most pragmatic officers find themselves walking closer together, an instinctive response to the unnerving silence. The K-9 handler has participated in hundreds of searches over his career. But something about this one raises the hair on the back of his neck in a way that has nothing to do with the cold. Rex's behavior grows increasingly frantic as they approach a small shed almost hidden by overgrown bushes at the property's edge. The structure leans precariously, its wooden walls weathered to a uniform gray, windows boarded up with plywood that's now warping and pulling away from rusted nails. Martinez signals for silence as they surround the building. The dog sits abruptly, the trained indication that he's found his target, but continues to whine anxiously, his eyes fixed on the padlocked door. Wilson approaches carefully, shining his flashlight through a gap in the boards. The beam catches something reflective inside, then a small movement. "Emily," he calls softly. "Emily Miller? We're police officers. We're here to take you home." A muffled sound comes from within, possibly a child's voice, but distorted by fear or something else they can't identify. The officers position themselves strategically around the shed, following protocol for an extraction. Martinez notes how his colleagues' hands hover near their weapons, not drawn, but ready. It's standard procedure, but tonight it feels like more than routine caution. The shed itself seems to exude a palpable sense of wrongness that has the officers on edge. Wilson inspects the padlock more closely, noticing that despite the building's obvious age and neglect, this lock appears newer, its metal gleaming dully in the flashlight beam. "Someone's been here recently," he mutters, gesturing to relatively fresh footprints in the soft earth near the door. Adult-sized prints, much larger than what a 7-year-old girl would leave. Martinez and Wilson exchange looks before Wilson draws his service weapon and uses a bolt cutter to snap the lock. The metallic snap echoes unnaturally loud in the stillness, causing several officers to flinch. As the door creaks open on rusted hinges, Rex lunges forward, but Martinez holds him back, allowing the officers to enter first. Their flashlight beams sweep the interior of the shed, illuminating cobwebs, discarded farm equipment. And then, in the farthest corner, a small figure huddled beneath what appears to be an old horse blanket. The air inside is stale and carries an unidentifiable odor that makes the officers instinctively cover their noses. "Emily?" Rodriguez approaches slowly, holstering his weapon and kneeling to appear less threatening. The blanket shifts slightly, revealing a glimpse of a pale face and frightened eyes. But as the officers move closer, their expressions change from relief to confusion, then to horror. The flashlight beams fully illuminate the scene, and what they reveal causes even the most seasoned officers to step back in shock. Martinez feels his blood run cold as he processes what he's seeing. In 15 years on the force, through homicides, accidents, and natural disasters, he's never encountered anything like the scene before him. His hand instinctively tightens on Rex's leash as the dog continues to whine, sensing his handler's distress. The small figure is indeed Emily Miller, recognizable from the photos they've been carrying. But she's not alone. Surrounding her are items that have no logical explanation for being there. Photographs of other children who had gone missing from neighboring counties over the past 5 years, some of whom were never found. Elaborate drawings covering the walls depicting scenes that no 7-year-old should be able to imagine, let alone render with such disturbing precision. And most alarmingly, a collection of personal items, toys, clothing, school ID cards, belonging to these missing children, arranged in what appears to be some kind of ritualistic pattern on the dirt floor. Emily herself sits unnaturally still, her eyes reflecting the flashlight beams but seeming to look through rather than at her rescuers. Though physically unharmed from what they can see, her behavior is profoundly unsettling. She rocks slightly, whispering words too quiet to make out, her small fingers tracing patterns in the dirt that mimic the larger arrangements surrounding her. When Rodriguez reaches out to touch her shoulder, she doesn't flinch or respond. Continuing her whispered monologue as if she's completely alone. "What is all this?" Taylor asks, voice barely above a whisper as he photographs the scene with shaking hands. No one answers because no one has an explanation that makes sense. The evidence suggests that Emily has been placed at the center of something much larger and more sinister than a simple abduction. Something that potentially connects to unsolved cases spanning years and multiple jurisdictions. Wilson's voice breaks the silence, barely audible as he radios dispatch. "We need additional units at the Westmore property immediately. And send medical. Tell them..." He pauses, struggling to find words to describe what they've discovered without alarming the parents waiting anxiously just outside. "Tell them to hurry and contact Chief Barnes. He needs to see this himself and get someone from county here too. This goes beyond Oakwood." He hesitates and then adds, "And tell them to bring the case files for the Sorensen, Whitaker, and Jensen disappearances. I think we might have found a connection." As Sarah and Michael Miller rush toward the shed, Officers Rodriguez and Taylor intercept them, gently but firmly preventing them from seeing what's inside. The night that began with a missing child has transformed into something far more complex and disturbing. A mystery that will shake the foundations of the quiet town of Oakwood and force its residents to confront secrets many had worked hard to keep buried. Martinez watches as the medical team arrives and approaches Emily with cautious professionalism. The girl still hasn't spoken directly to anyone, though her whispers continue unabated. As a paramedic kneels beside her, Martinez catches a fragment of what she's saying, 3 words repeated in an endless loop. He's still here. A cold wind seems to pass through the shed, causing the flames of the newly set emergency lanterns to flicker momentarily, casting grotesque, dancing shadows across the disturbing gallery of missing children's mementos. For just a moment, in the corner of his eye, Martinez thinks he sees a tall figure standing in the darkest corner of the shed. But when he turns to look directly, there's nothing there but farm implements and deeper shadows. Outside, the fog continues to thicken around the Westmore property as additional police units arrive, their red and blue lights creating an otherworldly glow that fails to penetrate the unnatural mist. Something has been unearthed tonight that goes beyond a simple missing persons case. Something that has left even hardened police officers shaken to their core. And as Emily Miller is carefully escorted from the shed, her vacant eyes suddenly focus for just a moment, looking back over her shoulder at something only she can see. A small, knowing smile briefly crossing her face before her expression returns to blank detachment. The investigation is just beginning, but already Martinez senses that some questions are better left unanswered, some doors better left closed. Yet, as law enforcement officers, they have no choice but to follow this dark path wherever it leads, even if it takes them into the heart of a mystery that has been patiently waiting for discovery, hidden in plain sight in their quiet town for years. The Oakwood Memorial Hospital buzzes with unusual activity for 3 a.m. The pediatric wing has been partially cordoned off, with officers stationed at strategic points throughout the hallways. Inside a private room, Emily Miller sits motionless on the examination bed, her vacant stare fixed on something invisible in the middle distance. Dr. Eleanor Chen, the hospital's most experienced pediatric psychiatrist, attempts various techniques to engage the child. But Emily remains unresponsive to direct questions. The only words she speaks continue to be whispered fragments that seem disconnected from her surroundings. It's like she's still there mentally. Dr. Chen explains to Detective Wilson in the hallway, keeping her voice low. Whatever happened in that shed has created a significant dissociative state. I've seen trauma responses before, but this... She hesitates, glancing through the observation window at Emily. This is something else entirely. Her vital signs are stable, but her psychological state is profoundly disturbed. Dr. Chen's clipboard contains pages of notes documenting Emily's unusual behaviors, the way her fingers continue to trace the same patterns in the air that she drew in the dirt floor of the shed, how she occasionally tilts her head as if listening to a voice no one else can hear, the fact that her body temperature remains stubbornly below normal despite the warm hospital room. Most concerning to the medical staff is the series of EEG readings showing brain activity patterns unlike anything in Dr. Chen's 20 years of practice. Waves that fluctuate between extreme states of heightened activity and near comatose levels, sometimes shifting between the two in seconds. I've consulted with neurologists at Johns Hopkins, Chen admits, lowering her voice further. They've never seen patterns like these either. It's as if parts of her brain are elsewhere. She doesn't elaborate on what she means by elsewhere, and Wilson doesn't ask. Some questions feel dangerous, even to articulate. Down the hall, Sarah and Michael Miller wait in a small consultation room, their faces haggard from hours of emotional turmoil. Chief Barnes himself has taken the responsibility of briefing them, carefully omitting the more disturbing details of their daughter's discovery. The most important thing right now is that Emily is physically unharmed, he assures them. But she's experienced something traumatic, and it's going to take time and professional help for her to process it. Sarah Miller clutches her husband's hand, her knuckles white with tension. "You're not telling us everything," she says, her voice steadier than expected. "I know my daughter, Chief Barnes. Whatever you found, whatever happened to her, it's worse than you're saying." Her eyes, though reddened from crying, hold a steely determination that reminds Barnes why she's been the president of the Oakwood Historical Society for the past 5 years. A woman who deals in facts and truth, however uncomfortable. Michael Miller, normally the more reserved of the couple, leans forward. "We've lived in Oakwood our entire lives. Our families have been here for generations. If there's something about this town we need to know, something that might help Emily, we deserve to hear it." Arrest voice breaks slightly on his daughter's name, but his gaze remains unwavering. Barnes considers his options carefully. These parents deserve the truth. But how much of it can they handle? How much of it can he even explain when he barely understands it himself? He makes a decision that will later prove pivotal to the investigation. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room," he begins, closing the folder containing the sanitized version of events he'd prepared. "Not yet. Not until we understand more." He takes a deep breath. "We have reason to believe Emily's disappearance may be connected to other cases, both recent and historical. Meanwhile, the Westmore property has transformed into a major crime scene. The FBI has been notified, with agents expected by morning. Powerful floodlights illuminate the area around the shed as forensic teams meticulously document and collect evidence. The collection of items belonging to other missing children has been carefully cataloged. 6 distinct cases spanning 3 counties, each represented by personal effects that should never have been in that shed. The forensic technicians work with uncharacteristic silence, the usual gallows humor that helps them cope with difficult crime scenes notably absent. One of them, a veteran named Ramirez, who's processed everything from mass shootings to serial killer dumping grounds, takes a break outside, his hands shaking as he lights a cigarette. "You okay?" asks a younger colleague, concern evident in her voice. Ramirez exhales a plume of smoke that mingles with the unnatural fog still clinging to the property. 23 years doing this job," he says quietly. "I've seen the worst humanity has to offer. But this..." He gestures vaguely toward the shed. "This doesn't feel like a human crime scene." The younger technician nods. Understanding exactly what he means, though, neither wants to articulate it further. There's something fundamentally wrong about the shed that transcends the disturbing evidence they're processing. Something in the air, in the very foundation of the structure, that feels hostile to their presence. Several team members have reported equipment malfunctions, cameras that won't focus, audio recorders picking up static, or, more disturbingly, what sounds like distant whispering in no recognizable language. Officer Martinez remains on site, unable to shake the feeling that they've only scratched the surface of something much larger. Rex, usually the most disciplined of K-9 officers, refuses to re-enter the shed, growing agitated whenever Martinez approaches the structure. The behavior is so uncharacteristic that Martinez has noted it officially in his report, though he's unsure what to make of it. "You believe in evil, Taylor?" Martinez asks his younger colleague as they watch the forensic team work. Not just bad people doing bad things, but actual evil? Taylor doesn't answer immediately, his eyes fixed on the shed. "I didn't," he finally says. "Not until tonight." Martinez nods slowly, absently stroking Rex's head to calm the still anxious dog. "My grandmother used to talk about places where the boundary between worlds was thin. She called them puntos débiles, weak points, said they were doorways that should stay closed." He pauses, watching as another technician emerges from the shed, looking visibly shaken. "I always thought they were just stories to keep us kids from wandering too far." "And now?" Taylor asks. Martinez's expression is grim. "Now I'm wondering if she was trying to warn us." Inside the evidence van, Detective Wilson and Lieutenant Rivera examine the photographs found in the shed. Each shows a child, the same 6 children whose possessions were arranged around Emily. But the settings are impossible. The backgrounds show locations in Oakwood that don't exist. A lighthouse on a cliff where there should be only farmland. An ornate Victorian mansion standing where the modern high school was built decades ago. A deep quarry in place of the town square. "These have to be manipulated," Rivera says, though uncertainty tinges her voice. "Digitally altered." Wilson shakes his head slowly. "Preliminary analysis says they're authentic film photographs, not digital. No signs of darkroom manipulation either." He doesn't voice the question hanging between them. How could these photographs exist? Rivera pulls out another photograph, this one different from the others. It shows all 7 children, the 6 missing children plus Emily Miller, standing in a circle in what appears to be the shed. But the shed in the photograph is new. Its wood fresh and unmarked by time. Behind the children stands a tall figure in Victorian-era clothing, his face obscured by what seems to be a camera malfunction or deliberate overexposure. The truly disturbing element, however, is that according to the timestamp printed in the corner, this photograph was taken in 1979, nearly 3 decades before some of these children were even born. "This can't be real," Rivera whispers. But the evidence analysis is clear. The photograph is authentic. The paper and chemical composition consistent with film processing techniques from the late 1970s. The children in the image are unmistakably the same ones they're investigating now, down to distinctive birthmarks and Emily's unique heterochromia. 1 blue eye, 1 green. As dawn approaches, bringing a pale, sickly light that does little to dispel the unnatural fog still clinging to the Westmore property, Officer Rodriguez makes a discovery that sends a chill through the investigation team. Hidden beneath rotting floorboards in the shed, wrapped carefully in oilcloth that has preserved it from decay, is a leather-bound journal dated 1879. The name inscribed on the first page reads, Thaddeus Westmore, the great-grandfather of the property's last known owner. Rodriguez brings the journal to Wilson, who carefully opens it wearing evidence gloves. The handwriting is meticulous, the English formal and dated. But it's the content that causes Wilson's professional demeanor to falter. The journal details experiments in what Thaddeus Westmore called the thinning of veils between worlds, and references children as perfect vessels for communion with what waits beyond. Scattered throughout are drawings that bear an unsettling resemblance to the ones found on the shed walls, the same patterns, the same symbols, created nearly 150 years apart. One passage in particular stands out, dated October 31st, 1879. The 7th child is key. The others prepare the way, their innocence creating resonance across the boundary. But it is the 7th who becomes the door. I have calculated the convergence will occur again in 50 years, when the stars align in the same configuration. I may not live to see it, but the work will continue. The entity has promised me this. Wilson feels a chill run through him as he reads these words. The implications are too disturbing to fully process in the field. He carefully returns the journal to its evidence container, making a mental note to have it analyzed by linguistic experts and historians who might make sense of the archaic references. Back at the hospital, Emily Miller finally speaks a complete sentence. Dr. Chen has stepped out momentarily, leaving a nurse to monitor the child. Without warning, Emily turns to look directly at the young woman, her previously vacant eyes suddenly sharp and focused. "He's been waiting a very long time," she says, her voice no longer a whisper, but clear and unnervingly adult. And now that the door is open again, others will follow. The nurse backs away involuntarily, dropping her clipboard with a clatter that brings Dr. Chen running back into the room. By the time she arrives, Emily has returned to her catatonic state. The momentary lucidity vanished as though it never happened. The nurse, visibly shaken, insists to Dr. Chen that Emily's voice changed completely during those few seconds, deeper, with an accent that sounded old-fashioned, like from an historical movie. More disturbing still, she claims the room temperature dropped so dramatically during Emily's brief speech that she could see her own breath. The hospital's environmental monitoring system shows no such temperature fluctuation, but the young nurse is adamant about what she experienced. Dr. Chen makes note of the incident, but privately worries about the psychological toll this case is taking on her staff. 3 nurses have already requested transfers away from Emily's care, citing nightmares and an inexplicable sense of dread when alone with the child. Chen herself has begun to experience unsettling phenomena. The feeling of being watched when alone in her office reviewing Emily's case files, and strange, fragmented dreams in which children with blurred faces stand in a circle, waiting for something to emerge from their midst. In the hospital's security office, a technician reviews footage from Emily's room, trying to document the incident the nurse reported. He frowns at the screen, rewinding and playing the same segment repeatedly. During the exact time frame when Emily supposedly spoke to the nurse, the video shows only static for precisely 27 seconds before clearing again. Even more concerning, in the frame immediately before the static begins, there appears to be a tall figure standing in the corner of the room. A figure that wasn't present according to either the nurse or the subsequent footage. The technician saves the anomalous video segment to a secure drive and notifies his supervisor, who immediately contacts Chief Barnes. As the first proper light of morning finally begins to break through the fog, Chief Barnes stands at the perimeter of the crime scene, watching FBI agents arrive and set up their mobile command center. His phone buzzes with a text from the hospital. Emily has finally fallen asleep, though her sleep is far from peaceful. The chief's expression is grim as he surveys the activity around him. In 30 years of law enforcement, he's never faced anything like this case. His phone rings, the county records office returning his urgent call from hours earlier. "Chief Barnes, you asked about historical disappearances in Oakwood, specifically around the Westmore property," the archivist says, her voice tense with what sounds like suppressed excitement. "I found something in the archived newspapers. In 1879, 7 children went missing over the course of 3 months. The last one was found in a shed on the Westmore farm, surrounded by possessions of the other missing children. According to the newspaper, the child was physically unharmed, but..." She pauses. The account says the child was altered in mind and spirit. speaking in tongues and drawing symbols no Christian child should know. Barnes feels the blood drain from his face. "And the other children?" he asks, already dreading the answer. "Never found," the archivist replies. The case was never solved. Thaddeus Westmore was the primary suspect, but he disappeared before he could be questioned. The interesting thing is, there were similar cases in 1929 and 1979, exactly 50 years apart each time. Always 7 children, always only the last one found. The archivist hesitates, then continues with reluctance evident in her voice. "There's more, Chief. The children who were found, the 7th child in each cycle, all exhibited similar behaviors afterward. They spoke of the tall man who showed them the other side. They drew the same patterns over and over. And," her voice drops almost to a whisper, "none of them lived more than a year after being found. The official causes of death varied: illness, accident, even suicide in the case of the 1979 child, who was older than the others. But local accounts suggested something else was at work." Barnes thanks her and ends the call, his mind racing. If the pattern holds, there should be 7 children involved in the current case, not 6. They've only identified 6 missing children whose possessions were in the shed with Emily. Which means... His phone rings again. It's Wilson, his voice tight with urgency. "Chief? We just got a call from the Carlson family on Elm Street. Their 9-year-old son, Noah, didn't come home from baseball practice last night. Mother thought he was staying at a friend's house, only realized he was missing when she called to check this morning." Barnes closes his eyes briefly, the weight of what they're facing settling over him like a physical burden. "When did anyone last see the boy?" "Yesterday evening," Wilson replies. "Around the same time Emily Miller disappeared?" The chief is silent for a moment, processing the implications. "And there's something else," Wilson continues, his voice now barely audible. "Mrs. Carlson mentioned that Noah has been drawing strange symbols in his notebooks for the past few weeks. When she asked about them, he said the tall man in his dreams was teaching him a special language. 7 children. The pattern continues, exactly 50 years later. Whatever began in that shed in 1879 has resurfaced, moving through time with the precision of clockwork. And somewhere in Oakwood, a 7th child is missing, potentially the key to understanding what connects these cases across nearly 150 years of the town's history. As Barnes issues orders for a new search operation, he glances back at the Westmore property. For just a moment, through a gap in the trees and the slowly dissipating fog, he thinks he sees a figure standing beside the shed, tall and unnaturally thin, dressed in clothing from another century. But when he blinks and looks again, there's nothing there but shadows cast by the morning light. The investigation has officially become something unprecedented in Oakwood's modern history. What began as a search for one missing girl has evolved into something that defies conventional explanation. A mystery that spans generations and challenges everything the seasoned officers thought they understood about the nature of the world and the darkness that sometimes seeps into it from places unknown. Barnes makes his way to his vehicle, intending to coordinate the search for Noah Carlson personally. As he opens the car door, his radio crackles with static before Officer Rodriguez's voice comes through, distorted but urgent. "Chief, we found something else under the floorboards. You need to see this. It's photographs of all of us. The entire investigation team. They look like they were taken last night. But the analysis says they're at least 40 years old." The chief grips his radio tightly, a cold sensation spreading through his chest as the implications sink in. "I'm on my way," he responds, his voice steadier than he feels. Whatever they're dealing with isn't just aware of them. It has been expecting them, perhaps for longer than any of them have been alive. As Barnes starts his car, he catches a glimpse of his reflection in the rearview mirror. For just a second, so briefly, he almost convinces himself he imagined it. He sees someone else looking back at him. A face similar to his own, but with eyes that hold knowledge no human should possess. Then his reflection is normal again, but the unsettling feeling remains. The boundary between observer and observed, between hunter and hunted, has blurred. In investigating this case, they have all become part of it. Players in a story that began long before them and shows no signs of reaching its conclusion. The fog finally begins to lift as morning establishes itself fully, but the clarity it brings offers little comfort. Some mysteries, once glimpsed, cannot be unseen. Some knowledge, once gained, cannot be forgotten. And some doors, once opened, cannot easily be closed again. The search for Noah Carlson intensifies as morning gives way to afternoon. Unlike the previous night's operation, this search carries a different energy, a grim determination tinged with dread. The officers and volunteers who comb the woods surrounding Oakwood know too much now, have seen too much to maintain the hopeful optimism that typically characterizes the early hours of a missing child case. They move methodically through the underbrush, calling Noah's name with voices that betray their fear of what they might actually find. Chief Barnes has established a secondary command center at the Oakwood Police Station, away from the FBI presence at the Westmore property. In a conference room with windows covered by maps and timelines, he's assembled a small team of his most trusted officers: Wilson, Martinez, Rodriguez, and Rivera, along with Dr. Chen, who has temporarily left Emily's care in the hands of colleagues. On the table between them sits a collection of evidence that defies rational explanation. Copies of Thaddeus Westmore's journal, the impossible photographs, and a timeline connecting the disappearances across 150 years. I need everyone in this room to accept that we're dealing with something unconventional. Barnes begins, choosing his words carefully. The FBI is pursuing standard investigative protocols, which we'll support fully. But in parallel, we need to explore avenues they won't consider. Dr. Chen leans forward, her clinical detachment fraying at the edges after hours of confronting phenomena outside her training. Emily's condition is deteriorating, she says without preamble. Physically, she's stable, but her psychological state is becoming increasingly fragmented. She's switching between catatonia and periods of something else. During these episodes, she speaks in multiple voices, some of which sound adult, some elderly, some not even. She hesitates, not even human. Has she said anything that might help us find Noah? Wilson asks, voicing the immediate concern. Chen nods slowly. During her last episode, she repeated one phrase several times. The lighthouse calls the seventh home. Does that mean anything to any of you? The officers exchange blank looks until Rodriguez suddenly straightens. The lighthouse in the photographs, he says. The one that doesn't exist in Oakwood. Could it be a real place somewhere else? Barnes turns to the county map spread across one wall. There's no lighthouse within 50 miles of here. We're too far inland. But there used to be. A new voice interjects. Everyone turns to see Sarah Miller standing in the doorway, her face pale but composed. Behind her, Michael Miller looks considerably more shaken, but equally determined. Mrs. Miller, Barnes begins, rising from his seat. "This is a closed meeting. My daughter is at the center of this." Sarah cuts him off, stepping into the room uninvited. "And I'm the president of the Oakwood Historical Society. Whatever's happening connects to this town's history, which means I might have information you need." Her voice softens slightly. "Please, Chief Barnes, let us help." After a moment's hesitation, Barnes nods and gestures to empty chairs. Once the Millers are seated, Sarah continues. "Oakwood wasn't always called Oakwood. Before 1880, it was known as Porter's Landing. It was a trading post on the Westward River." She points to the modern map. "The river changed course after major flooding in the 1890s, but it used to run right through what's now the center of town." "And there was a lighthouse?" Martinez prompts. Sarah nods. "A small one, on the highest point of land, where the high school stands now. It wasn't for ocean-going ships, obviously, but to guide riverboats during the frequent fogs that plagued the area." She pauses, gathering her thoughts. After the incidents in 1879, the missing children, the town changed its name and essentially tried to erase its past. The lighthouse was demolished, the river eventually changed course, and people forgot. Or chose to forget, Michael adds quietly. Barnes studies Sarah with newfound respect. "What else do you know about the 1879 incidents?" "Not much beyond what you've probably discovered," she admits. "The Historical Society has always focused on Oakwood's more palatable history. But there are rumors, local legends about the tall man who takes children. Most people dismiss them as typical small-town folklore, but..." She trails off, looking toward the evidence spread across the table. "The original lighthouse location," Wilson interjects, bringing the conversation back to actionable information. "Could you pinpoint it exactly?" Sarah nods and moves to the map, indicating a spot on the eastern edge of what is now the high school athletic fields. "Approximately here. There's nothing left of it now, though the foundation stones were reportedly used to build the first school on that site." Barnes is already reaching for his radio. "We need to redirect search teams to the high school grounds immediately," he orders. "Focus on the eastern edge of the athletic fields." As officers rush to comply with the new directive, Dr. Chen's phone rings. Her expression grows increasingly troubled as she listens to the caller. "Emily's gone," she announces as she ends the call. "Somehow she slipped past hospital security. A nurse went in to check her vital signs and found an empty bed." The room erupts in controlled chaos as Barnes issues rapid-fire orders to expand the search to include Emily. But beneath the procedural response runs a current of unspoken dread. The sense that events are accelerating toward some predetermined conclusion, one written long before any of them were born. At Oakwood High School, the athletic fields lie empty, the school closed for summer break. A chain-link fence surrounds the property, but it poses little obstacle to the search teams that quickly converge on the location. The eastern edge of the fields borders a small wooded area, beyond which lie residential neighborhoods. It's an unremarkable spot that gives no hint of its historical significance. Officer Martinez and Rex lead one of the first teams to arrive. The German Shepherd, so reluctant at the Westmore property, now pulls eagerly at his leash, nose to the ground and tail rigid with alertness. He's got something, Martinez tells the others, allowing Rex to guide them toward the tree line. The dog leads them to a maintenance shed tucked among the trees, a modern structure used to store athletic equipment. It's locked, but a quick check with school authorities confirms no one should be inside. When repeated knocking brings no response, Barnes authorizes forcing entry. The interior of the shed appears normal at first glance. Shelves of sports equipment, maintenance tools, bags of fertilizer for the fields. But Rex heads directly to a trap door in the floor, one that maintenance records make no mention of. When officers pull it open, they reveal a set of stone steps descending into darkness. The air that rises from below noticeably colder than the summer warmth above. This shouldn't be here, the school's maintenance supervisor says, peering over their shoulders. Building plans show solid concrete under this shed. Barnes orders most personnel to remain above ground while he leads a small team. Wilson, Martinez with Rex, and 2 officers with specialized training in confined space operations into the passage. Their flashlight beams illuminate rough-hewn stone walls that grow increasingly older in appearance as they descend. Modern concrete gives way to early 20th century brickwork, then to 19th century stone masonry. It's as if they're traveling backward through time with each step. The passage eventually opens into a circular chamber with a high ceiling, the walls made of fitted stone without mortar. In the center of the room stands what can only be described as a miniature lighthouse. A stone column about 4 feet tall, topped with what appears to be an ancient lantern mechanism. Surrounding this central feature in a perfect circle are 7 small chairs, sized for children. 6 of the chairs are occupied by unmoving figures, Noah Carlson and Emily Miller among them, along with the other 5 children whose possessions were found in the Westmore shed. All appear to be in the same catatonic state Emily displayed at the hospital. Their eyes open but unseeing, bodies rigid. More disturbing still is the 7th chair, which remains empty, waiting. "Get medical down here now," Barnes orders, his voice echoing strangely in the chamber. As Wilson relays the command through his radio, Martinez approaches the children cautiously, Rex whining softly at his side. "They're breathing," he confirms after checking Noah, "but they're completely unresponsive." He reaches toward the miniature lighthouse, but Wilson catches his arm. "Don't touch anything," the detective warns. "Not until we understand what we're dealing with." As if in response to his words, the lantern atop the stone column begins to glow with a pale blue light that seems to emanate not from any bulb or flame, but from the air itself within the ancient glass. The temperature in the chamber plummets, cold enough that the officer's breath forms clouds before their faces. The walls appear to vibrate slightly, though no sound accompanies the movement. "We need to get these kids out of here," Barnes says, moving toward Noah, the nearest child. But as he reaches for the boy, a voice speaks from directly behind him, a voice he recognizes with a chill of horror. No one leaves until the circle is complete. Barnes turns slowly to find himself facing what appears to be an elderly version of himself. Same features but aged by decades, wearing clothes from another century. The apparition stands between the officers and the stone stairway, effectively blocking their escape route. "Who are you?" Barnes demands, fighting to keep his voice steady as he subtly shifts to put himself between the entity and the children. The figure smiles, the expression never reaching its eyes. "I am the keeper. I have worn many faces through many cycles. Yours is simply the most recent." It gestures toward the empty 7th chair. "The circle must be completed. The door must open. It has always been so." "What door?" Wilson asks, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon, though some instinct tells him it would be useless against this being. "The door between worlds," the keeper replies, as if explaining something obvious. "Every 50 years, the alignment allows passage. 7 innocent minds form the key." It looks at the children with an expression almost like hunger. 6 prepare the way. The 7th turns the key. Martinez steps forward, Rex growling low beside him. These children aren't going anywhere with you. The keeper's form flickers like a television with poor reception, momentarily revealing something beneath the human appearance, something tall and gaunt, with too many angles and too few features. When it stabilizes again, it wears Barnes's face once more. But the illusion has been broken. They've glimpsed what lies beneath the mask. "You misunderstand," it says, voice now layered with other tones that echo strangely in the chamber. "I am not taking them anywhere. They are bringing something here." It gestures to the glowing lantern. The lighthouse calls across the boundary, and what answers that call has waited a very long time to return. The blue light pulses, growing stronger. The air in the center of the circle of chairs begins to distort, like heat waves rising from summer pavement, but more pronounced, more deliberate in its movement. Something is taking shape there. Something that hurts the eye to look upon directly. "Fall back," Barnes orders his team, each of them now drawing weapons despite their likely ineffectiveness. "Get the children and fall back." But before they can move, the 6 seated children speak in perfect unison, their voices blending into one otherworldly sound. The 7th comes. The circle will be complete. The stone stairway behind the keeper suddenly fills with movement as FBI agents pour into the chamber, led by Agent Harlow, the operation commander. "Federal agents," she shouts, weapon trained on the keeper. "Step away from the children." The keeper turns, seeming more annoyed than concerned by this interruption. With a casual gesture, it sends the agents flying backward against the stone walls with impossible force. Only Harlow remains standing, though she's pushed to her knees by some invisible pressure. "Your weapons are meaningless here," the keeper says. "This place exists in the overlap between worlds. Your rules hold little sway." It turns back to Barnes. The 7th will arrive momentarily. The one who should have been here originally, but escaped the calling 50 years ago. 50 years ago. Wilson repeats, his mind racing through the case details. "You mean the 1979 incident? But that child was found." "Found, yes," the keeper interrupts. "But she escaped before the ritual could be completed. She was stronger than anticipated. The circle remained incomplete, the door only partially opened." Its expression hardens. That will not happen again. A horrible realization dawns on Barnes. "Who was the child from 1979? He demands, though he suspects he already knows the answer. The keeper smiles that empty smile again. "She changed her name, tried to hide. But the calling always finds those marked by the lighthouse." It gestures toward the entrance to the chamber. "Ask her yourself." All eyes turn to the stone stairway, where a figure now stands. A woman in her late 50s, her face lined with years of hidden fear, but her eyes clear and determined. In her hand, she holds what appears to be an ancient key made of some dark metal. "Eleanor," Barnes breathes, recognizing Dr. Chen despite the transformation in her demeanor. "You were the 7th child." Chen, or the woman they knew as Chen, nods slowly, her gaze fixed on the keeper. "I was born Catherine Winters. In 1979, I was taken with 6 other children. I escaped before—" She gestures to the distortion forming in the center of the circle. "Before that could fully come through." "You've carried the key all these years," the keeper says, eyeing the metal object in her hand, "hiding it even from yourself through mundane psychology and science. How fitting that you would be drawn back to become the doctor treating these children." It takes a step toward her. The circle must be completed, The key must turn. I know, Chen replies, surprising everyone. That's why I'm here. She holds up the key, but not to open the door, to lock it permanently. The keeper's facade of calm cracks slightly, uncertainty showing through. That's impossible. The ritual cannot be reversed. It can, Chen counters, by the same person who escaped it. I've spent 50 years researching what happened to me, what this really is. She takes a step forward, seemingly unaffected by the force that pinned the FBI agents. You're not a god or a demon. You're a parasite. A consciousness that found a thin spot between dimensions and has been feeding on this town's fear for centuries. The distortion in the center of the circle pulses violently, as if agitated by her words. The 6 children remain rigid in their chairs, but their eyes have begun to track Chen's movements. You've manipulated events, used Thaddeus Westmore and others like him, created this 50-year cycle to sustain yourself. Chen continues, advancing slowly. But you made a mistake with me. You let me go before the connection was complete. And in doing so, you gave me the knowledge to end this. The keeper's form flickers more rapidly now, struggling to maintain its appearance as Barnes. You cannot stop what has already begun. It hisses, voice no longer human. The children are already part of the circle. Their minds are already open to what waits beyond. Their minds, yes, Chen acknowledges, but not their souls. Not yet. She moves to the empty 7th chair and sits down, completing the circle. The blue light from the lighthouse model intensifies dramatically, bathing the chamber in its unearthly glow. I am the 7th child of the 1979 cycle, returned to complete what was left unfinished. The keeper lunges toward her, but an invisible barrier seems to prevent it from entering the circle of chairs. Chen holds the ancient key above the miniature lighthouse, and the distortion in the center of the circle reaches toward it like a living thing, tendrils of not quite matter stretching eagerly. This isn't a key to open a door, Chen says, her voice now echoing with the same otherworldly quality as the children's. It's a key to close one. With a swift motion, she plunges the key into the top of the lighthouse model. The blue light changes instantly to a blinding white that forces everyone to shield their eyes. A sound like reality itself tearing fills the chamber, rising to a pitch that threatens to shatter eardrums before cutting off abruptly. When vision returns, the scene has transformed. The distortion is gone. The lighthouse model has crumbled to dust. The keeper writhes on the stone floor, its form cycling rapidly through dozens of appearances, men, women, children, things that are neither, before settling on its true form. A gaunt, emaciated humanoid, with skin like pale parchment stretched over too many bones. Eyes like black holes in a face with features that shift and flow like liquid. What have you done? It rasps, voice now a harsh whisper that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. Chen rises from the 7th chair, looking somehow both exhausted and triumphant. I've closed the door permanently. The connection is severed. She turns to the officers. The children will recover now. Their minds were being used as conduits, but the link is broken. As if to confirm her words, Noah Carlson stirs in his chair, blinking in confusion. One by one, the other children begin to move, looking around with expressions of bewilderment rather than the vacant stares of before. The creature that was the keeper shrieks, the sound painful to human ears. Its body begins to dissolve, edges becoming indistinct, substance seeming to evaporate into the air. This realm cannot sustain me without the connection, it says, its voice fading. You've doomed me to dissolution. You doomed yourself when you preyed on children, Chen replies without sympathy. When you used fear and suffering to sustain yourself. The creature continues to fade, becoming transparent, then merely a suggestion of form, then nothing at all. Its final words hang in the air after its disappearance. Others will find the thin places. Others will come. In the silence that follows, the children begin to cry, the natural reaction of young minds returning to awareness in a frightening situation. The officers and medical personnel rush to comfort them, to begin the process of reuniting them with their families. The FBI agents pick themselves up from where they were thrown, Agent Harlow looking shell-shocked, but quickly regaining her professional demeanor. I'll need a complete explanation of what just happened here, she tells Barnes, though her voice lacks conviction, as if she's already composing the heavily redacted version of events that will appear in official reports. Barnes nods absently, his attention focused on Chen, who is slumped against the wall, suddenly looking every day of her 50-plus years. He approaches her carefully. You knew all along, he says. It's not a question. She meets his gaze tiredly. Not at first. When I took the position at Oakwood Memorial, I didn't remember my own connection to this place. The mind protects itself from trauma. She glances at the children being led up the stone stairs to safety. But when Emily was brought in, when I saw the patterns she was drawing, it all came back. I knew another cycle had begun. Why didn't you tell us? Chen laughs softly, without humor. Would you have believed me? That an ancient entity was using children to open a doorway between dimensions? That I was a missing child from 50 years ago, who somehow had the key to stopping it? She shakes her head. I needed to wait until the conditions were right, until the circle was complete, but the door not yet fully open. It was the only chance to end it permanently. Wilson joins them, his expression a mixture of awe and lingering horror. What happens now? To the children, I mean. They'll recover, Chen says with quiet confidence. Children are remarkably resilient. They'll probably remember very little of what happened. Their minds will process it as dreams or nightmares that will fade with time. She looks around the ancient chamber. This place should be sealed, though, permanently. Barnes nods in agreement. I think that can be arranged. He offers her his hand, helping her to her feet. Dr. Chen, or should I call you Catherine? Eleanor is fine, she says with a small smile. Catherine Winters died a long time ago. I've been Dr. Eleanor Chen longer than I was ever her. As they make their way up the stone steps toward daylight, Barnes has one final question. You said the creature made a mistake with you, letting you go before the connection was complete. Why do you think it did that? Chen pauses on the stairs, considering. I don't think it was intentional. Something interrupted the 1979 ritual. I never knew what. But I've often wondered if it was someone like us. Someone who understood what was happening and intervened. She continues climbing. Perhaps there have always been people fighting this battle, across generations. People who glimpsed the truth and tried to stop it. Outside, afternoon has given way to evening. Parents have begun to arrive, the joyful reunions with their children creating a scene of controlled chaos around the maintenance shed. News vans line the street beyond the athletic fields, reporters already crafting stories that will inevitably miss the true nature of what transpired beneath their feet. Barnes watches as Emily Miller runs to her parents, her face alight with normal childhood emotion. No trace remaining of the vacant stare or otherworldly presence that had possessed her. Sarah Miller catches his eye over her daughter's head, a look of profound gratitude and lingering questions in her expression. There will be conversations later, decisions about how much to reveal, how much to protect. For now, though, Barnes allows himself to feel the simple relief of children saved. A threat ended. Tomorrow will bring reports to file, explanations to craft, a chamber to seal. But tonight, as darkness falls on Oakwood, it feels like a genuine darkness for the first time in 150 years. Natural and unthreatening, free from the influence of what had lurked in the thin place between worlds. As the last of the children are escorted to waiting ambulances for precautionary examinations, Chen approaches Barnes once more. "There's something you should know," she says quietly. "What I said down there about others finding the thin places, it wasn't just the creature's final threat. It's the truth." She looks out over the town of Oakwood, her expression grave. There are other places like this, other entities seeking ways through. This isn't the end of something. It's just the closing of one door among many. Barnes absorbs this unwelcome information with the stoicism of a man who has already faced the impossible and survived. "Then we'll be ready," he says simply. "If it happens again, here or elsewhere, we'll be ready." Chen nods, a weary smile touching her lips. "Yes," she agrees. "We will." Together, they watch as the maintenance shed is cordoned off with police tape, the first step in a more permanent sealing to come. The summer night settles around them, crickets singing in the nearby woods, stars appearing in the darkening sky. Normal sounds, normal sights. The world as it should be. For now. 3 months after the events at Oakwood High School, autumn colors the town. The maintenance shed has been demolished, replaced by an innocent garden concealing what lies beneath. Official reports describe a criminal kidnapping ring that was neutralized, a convenient fiction protecting the public from uncomfortable truths. Chief Barnes reviews the psychological evaluations of the 6 children, all recovering well with memories fading to vague impressions. Only Emily Miller retains clearer recollections, though her disturbing symbolic drawings have evolved into normal childhood art. Detective Wilson delivers historical research, revealing similar incidents across the country dating back to the 1800s. Children disappearing in groups, only one found, often in locations with historical significance or unusual geological features. "She was right," Barnes murmurs. "This is bigger than Oakwood." Wilson confirms that Agent Harlow has established a classified FBI task force called Project Lighthouse to monitor potential thin places where dimensional barriers might be vulnerable. He also delivers a fragment of the ancient key that sealed the doorway, sent by Eleanor Chen. Across town, Dr. Eleanor Chen completes her final hospital rounds before retirement, accelerated by unexplainable health issues. Emily Miller, the last child being discharged, gives her a drawing showing 7 children in a circle in Monument Valley, Arizona, one of the locations marked as a potential thin place. That evening, Eleanor receives a call from Agent Harlow. 3 children missing in Kayenta, near Monument Valley. The pattern matches. "I'm already packed," Eleanor responds. "I can be on a plane tomorrow." After the call, Eleanor examines a collection of objects gathered during decades of research. Symbols and artifacts associated with boundaries and protection, including another small silver key from a different thin place. "It's beginning again," she murmurs. "But this time, we're not starting blind." Chief Barnes requests a transfer to the FBI, a decision that feels inevitable after what he witnessed. When Wilson texts about the Arizona disappearances, Barnes's response is simple. "Book the flights. We're not letting her face this alone." Across Oakwood, those who witnessed the confrontation with the keeper carry their new awareness. Rodriguez saying extra prayers, Martinez checking locks repeatedly, Rivera searching case files for familiar patterns. In the hospital, Emily Miller turns in her sleep, momentarily causing the air above her to shimmer as if something is looking through from elsewhere before fading away. The door is closed in Oakwood, but elsewhere, other doors stand waiting. And in Monument Valley, beneath the desert stars, a circle of stones begins to glow with a faint blue light that no human eye yet witnesses. Night deepens over Oakwood, quiet and ordinary. For now.